Thabi, the stimulus package that has been announced by the president, obviously not in the trillions as some of our first world countries, as they call them, are putting out there, is ours enough, though, to save us if this is the first phase?
I think that, it was a very tough one, I can imagine, because obviously we don't have fiscal space. And if you look at what other countries have done, they have VAT or tax reprieves. And in the US, for instance, they've actually given, or they're proposing to give citizens money. And, there are many people who have lost jobs in other countries, and there's a lot of cushioning there because there's fiscal space. And what I mean by fiscal space is that there is, the government has either a fiscal surplus, or they have funds that they can get from, i.e. Quantitative easing or printing money so that they can support the economy. So in our case, we don't have the luxury of any of those. And what they've done is that they've tried to maneuver in a very little space and try to buffer the very vulnerable and the poor, which is the right thing to do. So they have set up this fund, the Solidarity Fund, where many people, South Africans, both South Africans and anyone internationally can contribute towards, and this fund will be utilized for coronavirus victims, or even to buffer those who have been impacted by the coronavirus. And they also have done, ensured that retailers are open so that those who are working in those sectors can continue to work. And he's also appealed to employers that they should continue giving the support, the financial support, and paying salaries to those employers who are not currently physically working.
And I'd like to hear from you, Thabi, just in terms of what the president was warning about anti-competitive behaviour. What we have seen, is it something that will ensure not only racial, gender, but also social justice, but it really does buffer our response away from it being more beneficial to the elite, those who are better off?
So I think that it does provide a social buffer to the poor. He went to the extent of actually going to the Competition Commission to ensure that certain companies do not mark up their prices, so that we've seen increases in sanitizers, for instance, so that the affordability is more widespread. So I think that actually it has appealed to those who have been left out of pocket by the coronavirus. And I think that it could have done more in terms of asking the more wealthier and those who can afford to assist, and actually maybe putting a temporary tax to those who can afford, so that you can alleviate the pain for those who can't. I also would have thought that, there are certain, I was thinking about it, that there are certain departments that could actually allocate their funds or have their funds allocated towards the coronavirus, softening of the coronavirus. For instance, sports and arts and culture could, their funds could be dedicated towards this cause. I would also argue that housing could do the same, but these are just my suggestions, and perhaps this could be taken forward in the next round should things be really bad for South Africa economically.
The package that the president announced, Thabi, seems to be pretty clear about who qualifies for what, which funds that they can go to if they're left out of pocket because they fall ill, or which categories of businesses will get tax breaks or tax exemptions. But does it really cover all who would require it? I'm looking at the package implementation. Will we all, at the end of it, come off and say every member of society who was vulnerable was protected?
I don't think it's possible, only because of what I said earlier, that we don't have the money. We simply don't have the money to do so. So as much as we're talking about the very poor and vulnerable, firstly, not everyone will be supported by this. group of people that concern me the most currently are those who come from children from rural areas, for instance, and what are they doing currently in terms of getting support and education? And so we're not seeing any funds dedicated to them. We're not seeing any funds dedicated to a lot of the rural and marginalized, and we don't see this even when we don't have a coronavirus. So I think that it's not possible for everyone to be covered by this, and this is the best that we can do given our resources. And I think that we should appeal to those who do have the funds to support those who don't or who are vulnerable by contributing towards this Solidarity Fund.
Dr. Thabi Leoka, economist, thank you very much for speaking to us, encouraging those with deep pockets to jump in and contribute to the Solidarity Fund as the President called for. Aldrin?